Throughout the pandemic, Christian Robbins was one of many suffering silently through social isolation. Separated from his support network, Christian's mental health took a vicious downward spiral until eventually he took his own life. It wasn't until after Christian's death that his father, Ted Robbins, realized how badly the pandemic had been fraying his son's mind. On Christian's laptop, he found notes where Christian described hearing whispers telling him how worthless he was, how he was hated by everyone. Sadly, stories like these are becoming more prevalent. They are a nationwide epidemic. Luckily, a new innovation has been made that could save these lives. Today, we're going to talk about Spravato, a new antidepressant medication made of esketamine. Spravato has the potential to treat stubborn cases of depression and suicidal ideation, which is when someone has serious thoughts, plans, or considerations of suicide. Stephen Meisel, an expert on the FDA board panel that reviewed Spravato, exclaimed to Insider August 5th, 2020, "I think there's substantial evidence that this could be a game changer." First, we will take a look at the mental health epidemic that has created a need for new antidepressant medications. Second, we will probe the Spravato process. And finally, we will investigate what the future holds for those who desperately need this esketamine-based drug. Before we can talk about how Spravato works, we must first understand why it is necessary by looking at the mental health epidemic that is now facing the United States. As this pandemic continues, so do the increasing rates of depression and suicide. The stress of COVID-19 and the isolation of social distancing have combined to create the perfect storm for the development of depression across the country. Since the start of the pandemic, the CDC, August 14th, 2020, found that 40.9% of adults reported having at least one adverse mental or behavioral health condition, including anxiety-related disorders and depression. Michael Falcone recounts his battle against depression to The Atlantic May 22, 2020. After losing his business due to COVID-19 restrictions, stating, "I fell into a pretty instant depression when I realized my actual purpose was disintegrating." But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of this increase in cases of depression is that suicidal ideation is on the rise among young adults. CNN, August 15, 2020, explains that in the past year, suicidal ideation has increased specifically in the age group 18 to 24. The report states that 25% of people in this age group have had serious thoughts of suicide just 1 month prior to taking the survey. NBC, January 29, 2021, tells the heartbreaking story of Trevor Till, a kind, eager, and hardworking student at the University of Illinois. Trevor had been so excited to start his university education, but lockdown changed everything. Trevor spent months in isolation without a roommate and not being able to attend any college activities. Soon, he began to display severe signs of depression. His mother thought that maybe when he came home for Thanksgiving, she'd be able to get him the help that he needed. But a few weeks before the holiday, Trevor committed suicide. Trevor and countless others have fallen victim to these disastrous moments of despair. Thankfully, the creators of Spravato have come up with the fast-acting medication that could save these lives in the nick of time. We will go over the Spravato process by first looking at how other antidepressant medications have failed, second, how Spravato efficiently interacts with the brain, and finally, by reviewing its results. Most antidepressants can take weeks or months to have a positive effect, not to mention they aren't even effective against treatment-resistant depression. A statement by the FDA last updated March 5th, 2021, reminds us that there has been a long-standing need for additional effective treatments against treatment-resistant depression, a serious and life-threatening condition. Psychology Today, September 17th, 2020, warns that 1 out of 3 patients does not respond to antidepressant medication, but instead can suffer from apathy, lack of concentration, insomnia, and even physical pain. Who needs these unwanted side effects when they're already on the brink of suicide? Fortunately, esketamine-based Spravato is able to interact with the brain in a revolutionary way that hasn't been seen in the field before. Johns Hopkins Medicine, December 3rd, 2020, reveals that Spravato's main function is balancing neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers that neurons use in order to communicate with one another. Spravato, delivered in the form of a nasal spray, enters the brain and blocks the receptor known as NMDA, or N-methyl-deaspirate, resulting in an increase of the neurotransmitter glutamate. By blocking NMDA and increasing the amount of glutamate, Spravato is able to help regulate communication between neurons in the brain, effectively reducing symptoms of treatment-resistant depression and suicidal ideation in just hours. Spravato's speed and effectiveness has led to its rapid approval as a treatment to combat the rise of depression and suicidal ideation. Psychiatric Times, August 3rd, 2020, notes that since the FDA's approval of Spravato for treatment-resistant depression, 6,000 patients have been prescribed the medication, and now it's even been approved to treat cases of major depressive disorders as well. Nicole, 23, from St. Petersburg, Missouri, testifies in a case study about her experience using esketamine-based Spravato. Nicole explains that she'd been suffering from a severe depression that left her unmotivated and in a state of hypersomnia. But once she started using Spravato, she was able to rebound and allowed herself to grow as a person. Spravato gave Nicole a bright future, but not everyone is optimistic about this game-changing drug. Let's go over the future of Spravato by looking at the obstacles it must overcome in order to potentially help millions. As of right now, Spravato is far too expensive, leaving those in financial distress at high risk for self-harm. Science Daily, July 13th, 2020, warns that at $240 a dose, a year of treatment would cost upwards of $8,000. And yes, that's with insurance. The price of the main ingredient in Spravato, esketamine, must drop by 40% in order to be cost-effective. The high price of Spravato means that the people who need it the most do not have access to it. As the World Economic Forum, January 28, 2021, uncovers that 30% of people with low income are likely to suffer from depression and suicidal ideation. However, if Spravato can overcome its challenges, the results it produces are very promising for those suffering from depression and suicidal ideation. NPR, August 7, 2020, heralds that Spravato is the first approved antidepressant medication that's been able to demonstrate a reduction in symptoms of major depressive disorders within just 24 hours after the first dose. By alleviating symptoms of major depressive disorders in just 1 day, Spravato can serve as a lifeline for those in potentially fatal mental health episodes, offering relief to family, friends, and most importantly, those dealing with debilitating symptoms of suicidal ideation in just days, not months. First, we went over the increasing rates of depression and suicide. Second, we came to understand the process of Spravato, and finally, we recognize how Spravato creates hope for the future of mental health. With FDA approval, Spravato has a fighting chance to help those who are dealing with treatment-resistant depression and grappling with suicidal ideation. This non-invasive esketamine-based nasal spray has the potential to save people like Christian, Michael, Trevor, and countless others from their darkest moments.